What is up, you guys? I am Anthony Metro. Welcome to the video. Today I'm going to be giving you my 2020 National League Central predictions. Before I get started, if you like this video, please be sure to subscribe on YouTube. Also follow me on Instagram as well as Twitter at Anthony Metro MLB. I also want to give a special shout out to a few people that helped collaborate in making this video with me. The Brewers News, Brewers.GameDay, Cardinals Updates, Cardinals Bat Flip, Redbird Zone, Cardinals_Insider, and Cardinals.Dugout. Be sure to give all those guys a follow. Their Instagram handles are right here. Kicking it off in the Central are the Pittsburgh Pirates. Gone are Clint Hurdle and Neil Huntington. In are Ben Sherrington and Derek Shelton. The Pirates, of course, firing their GM and manager after a 69-93 season last year. This is the beginning of what should be a very lengthy rebuild for the Pirates, who had an all-around embarrassing season last year in 2019, both on and off the field. Earlier in the year, there were arguments and altercations among coaches and players, which of course ended up culminating in a clubhouse fight between relievers Felipe Vasquez and Kyle Crick. And after such a brutal year, it only made sense for the Pirates to finally clean house and move on from Clint Hurdle and Neil Huntington. But while things were very bad for the Pirates in 2019, there were a few silver linings for them. One of the lone bright spots, of course, for the 2019 Pirates was the emergence of Josh Bell, who cemented himself as one of the top first basemen in all of baseball. They also got to see two of their young starters in Joe Musgrove and Mitch Keller debut and make strides toward what will hopefully become a young rotation. Mitch Keller is slotted to pitch in the 5th spot in the rotation for the Pirates this year. He is baseball's 39th overall prospect, and though he was roughed up a bit last year, he is 23 years old and he can throw the ball 99 miles per hour. Anytime you have that kind of combination, it is enticing. The Pirates also have their second best prospect ready to debut in third baseman Ke'Bryan Hayes. Hayes is ranked as the 41st overall prospect in all baseball, and he profiles to be a Gold Glove caliber third baseman. The Pirates are going to be bringing back largely the same group of players for their lineup, minus one, of course, Starling Marte, who they traded to the Diamondbacks this offseason. Unfortunately for the Pirates, it is going to be a long time before we see them contending again. The Pirates can only look forward to the development of their young players and potential trades at the deadline for some of their veterans, guys like Chris Archer and Gregory Polanco. Overall, they went 31-47 against the NL Central last year, and I don't expect them to have a winning record versus the improved Cincinnati Reds once again. Look, it would be easy for me to say, yeah, the Pirates will come back and win 70 games, but I don't think that's the case. Somehow, someway, the Pirates are going to be worse than they were last year. My prediction for the Pittsburgh Pirates is once again last place at 65-97. A 4-game decrease from last year's win total. I'm going to put the under on clubhouse fights at 2. The Milwaukee Brewers had an excellent second half run last year, and in the process bumping division rival Chicago Cubs from the second spot in the wild card. A big reason for that run was the Brewers' improved pitching, which in the second half lowered their team ERA by a half a run. During this offseason, the Brewers of course lost starting catcher Yasmani Grandal in free agency to the White Sox. They have also moved on from veterans Travis Shaw, Jesus Aguilar, and Eric Thames. The Brewers also pulled off a big trade with the San Diego Padres, acquiring top 50 MLB prospect shortstop Luis Urias, as well as starting pitcher Eric Lauer. The Brewers will also be experimenting by putting Ryan Braun at first base to replace the departed Eric Thames. The most important and biggest thing of all is that they may have the best player in all baseball, MVP candidate Christian Yelich. Congrats, by the way, on your new deal, Christian. The Brewers also brought in Azavel Garcia to play right field for the team. But what is Lorenzo Cain at this point? After a terrific 2018, he saw a 70-point dip in his on-base percentage last year. The Brewers will need Cain to get back to his 2018 production and once again reignite the top of the lineup. Keeson Hirua, a former top 10 MLB prospect, made his debut last year. The rookie slugged 19 home runs and a .938 OPS. He will need to continue to work on his fielding as he had some difficulties at second base. Eric Sogard and Brock Holt are nice additions to the rest of the lineup, but the infield still appears to be a little weak. I think that this lineup is good, but not great. I think they are genuinely going to miss the production from Yasmani Grandal. Here's where things are going to get difficult for the Brewers. They are going to be challenged in the rotation. Brandon Woodruff aside, there are question marks all up and down the rotation for the Brewers. Adrian Hauser pitched well in 2019, yes, but mostly as a reliever. In 18 starts, he had a 4.57 ERA. Journeyman Brett Anderson pitched well for the Oakland Athletics last year, but his career numbers suggest that he isn't much more than a 4th pitcher in a rotation. Then there's Josh Lindbaum, who has spent the better part of the last few years pitching in Korea, and while he dominated that league, the class of the MLB should be a much more difficult time for him. The final rotation spot figures to come between newly acquired Eric Lauer and Freddie Peralta. Peralta is highly touted for his ability to throw 100 miles per hour and a 94 mile per hour slider. The Brewers are also going to struggle with defense on the right side of the field. As I mentioned earlier, Keaton Iura struggled at second base, and Ryan Braun will be getting his bearings at first base still. Overall, the Brewers are a good team, but with some questions in the rotation as well as in their lineup. My prediction for the 2020 Brewers is an 82-80 record, 4th place in the National League Central. The Cincinnati Reds have one of the most monstrous off seasons in all of baseball, adding Nick Castellanos, Mike Moustakas, Japanese product Shogo Akiyama, and relief pitcher Pedro Strop. Castellanos had a tremendous second half after being acquired by the Chicago Cubs last year at the July trade deadline. Mike Moustakas was his usual consistent self last year with the Milwaukee Brewers, hitting 30 home runs and 90 RBIs as he so often seems to do. This all coming on the heels of a mid-season trade that saw them acquire Cleveland pitcher Trevor Bauer. The Reds finished 75-87 last year and are hoping that those additions will put them over the top. That remains to be seen, but the moves were widely lauded all throughout baseball. The Reds are adding to an already talented roster that features Eugenio Suarez, who hit 49 home runs last year, Tucker Barnhart behind the plate, Freddie Galvis at shortstop, Nick Senza will be playing in center field, in addition to Jesse Winkler in left field. Oh, and by the way, the Reds do still have Joey Votto. Aristides Aquino had an impressive debut, slugging 19 home runs, though he had a streaky September. And despite his great defense, speed, and slugging ability, Aquino may actually be a roster casualty due to the glut of outfielders. Aquino is the only Reds outfielder that has an option for AAA, and he may be destined to start the season there. Meanwhile, the Reds have improved their starting rotation. Rather than doing what many other teams do and rebuilding it through the draft, the Reds have acquired most of their starters. Of course, Luis Castillo was homegrown and he developed into a great starter. He had a tremendous first half but fell off in the second half. Sonny Gray also bounced back for the Reds in 2019 after a dreadful 2018 with the Yankees. Rounding out the rotation for the Reds is Anthony DeSclafani, who had his best season of his career in 2019, as well as Wade Miley, who has pitched very well himself in the last few years. I am really having a tough time with the National League Central. I'm not gonna lie, this has been very difficult. And I'm having the most trouble with the Cincinnati Reds right now. The old saying, you don't win on paper and you don't win in the offseason, is ringing in my head. But at the same time, I look at that roster, I look at the projections, and I see that they have a good team. Many pundits have actually predicted them to finish in first place in the National League Central. And it really wouldn't come as a surprise to me if that did end up happening. However, I'm not totally buying into that starting rotation. Luis Castillo, yes, he was very good in the first half, but again, struggled in the second half. Sonny Gray had a great 2019, but I can't be the only one that's a little weary about him, especially pitching in that very hitter-friendly ballpark. And I don't buy into Trevor Bauer's stock. In fact, the last time he had an ERA below 4 was 2018. Other than that, it's been consistently in the mid-4s since 2014. Further, I think the lineup is just a bit too one-dimensional. Yes, they're going to slug home runs out of the ballpark, but they are going to strike out a ton. Again, this has been a very difficult decision for me, and I've gone back and forth on it for a long time. However, it's my opinion the Reds will finish 83-79, 3rd place in the National League Central. This is going to be disappointing for the Reds. A lot of people have hopes that they're going to win the Central. I just don't think that they're ready to do that just yet. The Cubs had an epic September collapse that saw them go 11-16, and the Milwaukee Brewers took their second wildcard spot. Things did not get any easier for the Cubs in the 2019 offseason. The Cubs saw longtime manager Joe Maddon leave for the Los Angeles Angels, then had to deal with swirling trade rumors and a service time dispute with all-star third baseman Chris Bryant. The Cubs failed to add any real material improvements to their roster, only adding Jason Kipnis and David Phelps. The Cubs will get to see a full season out of their top prospect, second baseman Nico Hoerner. Hoerner is the 51st overall prospect in all of baseball, and he had his first cup of coffee with the team in 2019. As I mentioned before, the Cubs are going to be returning largely the same lineup as they had the last few years. Still, I think they're being a little underrated by some of the pundits. You have Anthony Rizzo, who's one of the best first basemen in all of baseball. Chris Bryant, who quieted any concerns about his shoulder with a tremendous 2019. Wilson Contreras, who is one of the best catchers in all of baseball on both offense and defense. And Javi Baez, who in his own right is one of the tops at his position. They also have a few ancillary pieces in Ian Happ and Kyle Schwarber. The Cubs rotation looks to be in the middle of the road. After a rough beginning to his Cubby career, Yu Darvish turned things around in the second half and finished with one of the top ERAs in all of the league. Kyle Hendricks has put together a strong couple of seasons, and he will look to build off a tremendous second half himself. John Lester at the age of 36 may be exactly what we're seeing at this point, but he always seems to have a knack for picking himself off the mat. Then you have Jose Quintana and Tyler Chatwood, who have both failed to live up to the contract and trade expectations when they were both acquired. That group, minus the departed Cole Hamels, pitched to a 4.99 ERA in a September in which they went 11-16. Overall, I think pundits are being a little too harsh on this team. They didn't add much in the way of free agency this year, but they still have a very strong core. My prediction for the 2020 Cubs is they will be fighting for the second wildcard spot, a record of 84-78. Yes, the Cubs will have the same record as last year, but I think it will end in a much better fashion. I'm not ready to say that they are a wildcard team yet, but I think that they will be playing much better down the stretch than they did in 2019. The St. Louis Cardinals began 2019 44-44, an even 500 through 88 games. They then rode a second half surge going 47-27 all the way to an NL Central title. A big reason for that was a historic second half performance of Jack Flaherty, who pitched below a 1 ERA. Now, while it appeared that the Cardinals were building toward a vaunted pitching rotation, things have been slowed down at least for the moment. Miles Mikolas was recently shut down from pitching for 3 to 4 weeks and will miss the start of the season. But the Cardinals have the horses in the rotation to make up for it. Daniel Hudson had an impressive rookie campaign, and Adam Wainwright will return to the rotation. What the Cardinals will get out of Wainwright is still a mystery though. He of course missed a large part of 2019 due to injury. Rounding out the final spot in the rotation could be a competition between Kwang Eun Kim, Alex Reyes, Daniel Ponce de Leon, and John Gant. A big reason for the Cardinals' struggles at times in 2019 was their offense, in which they ranked in the bottom third in most offensive categories, including runs and home runs. The Cardinals overall have a decent group in my opinion though. First base slugger Paul Goldschmidt had a down year in his first season with the St. Louis Cardinals, but I expect him to bounce back closer to his career norm with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Further around the diamond you have Colton Wong at second base, Paul DeJong at shortstop, Matt Carpenter at third base, in left field, Tyler O'Neill. The Cardinals did lose outfielder Marcell Ozuna to the Atlanta Braves this offseason and did not feel the need to replace him. And that may be because of top prospect Dylan Carlson. Carlson is the 17th ranked prospect in all of baseball. And last year, between time in AA and AAA, he slugged 26 home runs and stole 20 bases. Overall, the Cardinals are just a well-run organization. Very similar to the Braves, they always have a knack for developing and bringing up young talent. The Cardinals play very strong defense and are fundamentally sound in every way. Personally, I'm a big fan of Tyler O'Neill out in left field. Tommy Edman was tremendous last year, and Dylan Carlson is knocking on the door and could become a middle of the order structure for the Cardinals in 2020. As I mentioned earlier, I think the Cardinals have one of the better starting rotations in the National League, and I believe that their pitching staff has the depth to make up for any injuries. It is for those reasons that I believe that the Cardinals are top dog in the National League Central. My prediction for the 2020 Cardinals is a record of 89-73, and they will retain the NL Central crown.
So there you guys have it. There are my 2020 National League Central predictions. The Cardinals keep the crown, the Cubs come in second place, the Cincinnati Reds have a letdown in third place, and the same goes for the Brewers in fourth, and of course the Pittsburgh Pirates finish in last once again. Be sure to subscribe and stay tuned. The National League West predictions are coming up next.